Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 24th of January. Well, it was an interesting little retrace there. We filled in all the positive extremes we had been talking about within the setup. And conveniently, we went so close to the ABM yellow line. If we take a look at it right there, is at 26.10, the DO fast, and our low is 12.50. And it bounced pretty closely right off that, got right back to the 61%, which was just under the 35.50, and again we're bouncing right back and forth to that 35.50. We can see that short-term buyer spike of the steel helped with this falling orange. That could create a bullish snake here without too much difficulty. Still haven't crossed the shakeout yellow below magenta, which would really confirm sell. Oftentimes what you get is this little wave action. It just keeps staying above and it keeps popping, and that will continue to lead to rise in price, particularly since we're in gold here, where when you're above that 50% level, you expect that to make it back to the high. The question is, in this case, will the highs start to dip down to catch it as we move across? Time will tell on that one. Previous 100% now is right down to the highs from here. We could count the bars going across, and then once you get to 53 or so, it's going to start adjusting, and the next step down would be the highs right here at 24-ish, 27, 24, which is still another 80 plus points to the upside from where we're at. So gives you an indication. You can see the NASDAQ, though, much weaker on that shakeout reading, the exact same situation, but a little bit softer, right below the 61% and below the ABM yellow, which makes it, I think, always an easy one. It's like above the ABM yellow, you know that you can be long. Below it, you can keep fighting to the short side, assuming you have the signals. Here you get a much cleaner cross of the steel already above orange, and move slightly above with steel over cyan. You should get a bullish trend, except for the fact you would want to see a little bit of that green turnaround. It's just going to indicate that you're not going to get much downdraft, is usually what that does. There's been no assistance whatsoever. There was a little spike in the euro, which actually helped, even though, I mean, it's a tiny move, but still it was gave it a little bit of support. Nothing happening for it right now. Gold, well, holding on, but now we've broken down dramatically, so we still maintain the highs, but this is a much more severe shakeout release, and you can see the dips below the red line. We're oversold, but still holding low, right on that ABM green level. As long as it does that at the first turnaround and shakeout, we would expect a new buy run on gold. So there was the intraday from a 5K standpoint. This is the GAM function paint bar. We got positive extremes. We filled those. You'll recall that our discussion from the previous day was the we had it off of the we'd go way back. I'd have to shrink this quite a bit. It's not worth doing it, but anyway, we had the dip all the way down here, the 26.13 range that we were looking at, the 26.18 were positive extremes from way back. And as we started spiking up, we were still below cyan, but we started to get the dips of the steel crossing below. Those tend to start becoming very interesting, particularly if you're below the 15 on the shakeout setup. But it just continued to kind of ebb forward every time we had a little dip, returned right back up to it. And we finally started to get to peak maneuvering right about here. This was an early crossover signal where shakeout was still slightly ahead, but by the time you reached the second point, so it sort of gives you that warning. It's like, okay, I've got positive extremes in the near term, just right about to the 48. So even when you're getting this setup, it's like, okay, now I've got my ABM slightly above it. So I know a breakdown below that is really going to start to accelerate. And Sure enough, that's exactly what happened. We had a little bit of a warning here as you cross the cyan, but you can see that we were just continuing to drop. This was something I was pointing out to another member. I'll put up the 50K real quick. You can see it. Anytime that yellow shakeout gets below blue, it's sort of like the equivalent of a cyan under red, which is always a buy, becomes always a sell. And you can see what it looks like in this particular case. I colored it from a dark, they call it dark gray. It's just kind of a gunmetal gray, and it really reflects that nicely. Same concept going on through here, and that continued down. We ended up with the tiniest of little pops that you can see get the yellow overbought right after the dip below the red line right here, which we talked about that the other day too. It's like within 5 bars that usually is a warning, and that was what we were seeing on the 50K right here. And I was like, hey, you know, any little pop from here. We had 2 of them showing. Little pop here anytime you start to get the rise in cyan, and literally that crossover right there was the clean trigger for the nice move that came all the way back down. So it was pretty spot on with that. And then as we dipped, we started to make, and I didn't even move these, but you can take a look at them. So we made the lower hump right here from the red DOCs, so every time we tried to make a move, the orange popped right back above cyan, and we weren't getting any of the steel crosses coming back and forward. But what happened was we started to make the lower dip, and then we made lower humps, and then what happens is that you get this marker right here, and as soon as you cross back above it on a buy signal, and I'm at the lows, it becomes an attractive construct for buy signal. And then I'm looking at my shakeout, and again, my yellow is above magenta and just riding nicely above it. And that's what started what I call a really ugly kind of long setup where it was just sort of choppy, but you might call these little your ABC kind of setups. It was pretty much soft, and we just had cyan under red all the way through, and it was putting in a couple, but every time I put in a positive extreme, it was filling them back in, so there wasn't any crazy urgency to it. And then by the time we got towards the end of the day, we started to fill back in the tiny little ones that were there. And nothing pretty special happening right here. Pre-market already had made new highs, retraced. It's doing it again, so we'll see if before the market opens if there's a dip, because that would be a powerful one, because you know that once the market opens, they're going to want to try and touch those pre-market setups. So if we're higher, then they're probably going to try and re-reach the low. But again, above that, this was that previous algo level from the positive extremes at 38 and a quarter that we had, and then the previous one, 26.43. Hit it right there, rejected. We're coming up against it right now, so we'll see if it produces the same kind of effect. We've had a pretty flat shakeout, but it's starting to improve significantly right there. From a 50K standpoint, the white candle buy came in, of course, the power mill. And it was funny because we even talked about this one being a suspect. It's like, from a practical warning standpoint, right about there would have been the correct point for it to exit out from the 32. Would have been right around 43, so still would have been 10. Instead, it stayed with that whole move lower, which these are some of the adjustments that I'm making that will really improve how that setup works and really give us some strong indication. The nice one about this one is this buy we would consider just a fraction early, even though it's on the pivot. It's where the X pops in, is where the strong one. And I actually bought the second contract right at that point, so that was at the 26.25.50 for it, and it's already doing nice for the return on that setup. And you can see just a gentle rise. This isn't really anything dramatic from a shakeout standpoint, but just about to move positive. So if it does that and gets above 50%, we'd be looking at a pretty decent turn setup from the dip, which caused by anything in particular? No, but this is what happens. The algorithms do their little thing. They cleared out any of the stops from people who bought in at this little dip. They started to come back. Hey, checked how much volume they had. There really wasn't enough to continue driving it lower, and that's what causes price to move back to the mean. And that's really kind of what we've got from the setup right here. If we get back up to this high range right there, we'll have developed a new channel, so to speak. And we notice the much narrower Morganacci lines as they've squeezed from the new low. And that's one of those where when it breaks and it doesn't really do a whole lot and then starts to go flat, you're starting to think, okay, I got to build in momentum. I always look for that. And that's why in all the programs that I've got, if we have the falling lows, we're not really interested in looking for a buy at all until it flattens out a little bit to suggest that, hey, we're starting to see some consolidation. That's where seeing that rising DOC red really can give you a clue, as well as the shakeout yellow in that case, because it's saying, hey, even though price isn't really doing anything, we're seeing activity that's letting us know that some people are gobbling up and absorbing any sellers. And so it becomes a neat way to see it. As always, though, I'll put up anything relevant. None of the intraday stuff. It was just all a bunch of chop and back and forth. It was just a matter of picking each of the different zones and looking for the signal that would let you know whether that zone was going to support or break. And in a lot of the cases, once we had that full dip, everything became supportive of a return back, and it just filled it all in. That's the long and the short of it for now. As always, though, I will put up the charts, and we'll have another solid trading day. Have a good one.